Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I was working a double shift on my 24th birthday at Tech Support Solutions when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother, Sarah. The message destroyed me. "We sold your Honda Civic. Family comes first. Be grateful we still let you live here rent-free." Before I could process this shock, another text arrived demanding $6,000 for my younger brother Dylan's first college semester due within a week. When I refused, my father, Robert, exploded in rage, screaming that I was dead to them and must pack immediately and leave their house forever. The fluorescent lights in the office seemed to flicker as I stared at my phone screen, reading those words over and over again. My Honda Civic. Gone. The car I had saved every penny for during 3 grueling years of working nights at Peterson's Grocery while finishing high school. I could still remember the pride I felt driving it off the lot, my first real achievement as an adult. I grabbed my keys and rushed out of Tech Support Solutions without explaining anything to my supervisor, Janet Martinez. The 20-minute drive home in my coworker's borrowed truck felt like hours. My hands trembled against the steering wheel as worst-case scenarios flooded my mind. Maybe this was some kind of twisted birthday joke. Maybe my family had planned a surprise and moved my car somewhere safe. But when I turned onto Maple Street and saw our driveway, my heart sank into my stomach. The familiar blue Honda that had occupied the same spot for 2 years was gone. In its place sat only an oil stain on the concrete and tire marks leading to the street. I burst through the front door to find my parents and my 17-year-old brother Dylan sitting around our kitchen table. College brochures were spread across the surface like colorful weapons of financial destruction. Dylan looked up at me with that smug expression he had perfected since childhood, while my mother Sarah barely glanced away from a pamphlet about dormitory costs. "Where is my car?" I demanded, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. My father Robert stood up slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across the table. "Sit down, Victor. We need to have a serious conversation about family responsibilities." I asked where my car is. Sarah finally looked at me, her brown eyes cold and calculating. "We sold it to Bill Watson next door this morning. $8,000. We kept $2,000 as payment for the rent you should have been contributing this past year." The room started spinning. "Rent I pay for groceries every week. I cover the internet bill. I bought the new washer when ours broke last month." "That's not enough," Robert interrupted, his voice rising. "You're 24 years old, Victor. Most parents would have kicked you out years ago. Instead, we've been supporting you while you play around with your little computer job." Dylan leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the show. "Yeah, bro, time to step up and help the family for once." I stared at my little brother, remembering when I used to help him with homework when I taught him how to ride a bike in this same driveway where my car used to sit. Now he was looking at me like I was some kind of burden he couldn't wait to get rid of. "The car was mine," I said quietly. "I saved for it. I paid for it. You had no right." Sarah slapped a folder down on the table. "We have every right. As long as you live under our roof, what's yours is the family's." And speaking of family obligations, Dylan has been accepted to Riverside University. Full tuition for his first semester is $6,000 due by Friday. My stomach dropped even further. Riverside University was one of the most expensive schools in the state, a private institution that charged premium prices for premium education. The kind of place where wealthy kids went to network and party, while their parents paid for the privilege. Dylan got into State University too, I said, trying to keep my voice reasonable. "The in-state tuition there is less than half the cost. State is for average students," Dylan said, smirking. "I'm going to study business at Riverside. I'm going to be successful, unlike some people who fix computers for minimum wage." Robert nodded approvingly at his younger son. "Dylan has real potential," He's going to make something of himself. That's worth investing in. And what about me? The question came out more desperate than I intended. You, Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're 24 and still living at home. You work in tech support. You spend your free time playing video games and reading comic books. Dylan is our chance to have a son we can be proud of. The words hit me like physical blows. I had always known my parents favored Dylan, but hearing it stated so bluntly made my chest tight with pain I couldn't quite name. I need my car to get to work, I said. You work from home twice a week, Robert replied dismissively. Take the bus on the other days. Or maybe this will motivate you to find a better job closer to home. I noticed my laptop bag sitting by the front door packed and ready. They had assumed I would simply accept their decision and find somewhere else to go. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. I'm not giving you $6,000, I said firmly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Robert's face began to turn red, a warning sign I had learned to recognize over the years. Excuse me. I said no, I'm not paying for Dylan's college. Dylan sat up straighter, his smirk fading. What do you mean, no? I mean, I worked for 3 years to save enough money for that car. You sold it without asking me. Now you want me to pay for college I'll never attend for a brother who just called me a failure. The answer is no. Sarah stood up her chair, scraping against the linoleum floor. You ungrateful little shit, after everything we've done for you. What have you done for me? The question came out louder than I expected. You sold my car. You want me to pay rent retroactively. You're demanding I finance Dylan's education while treating me like garbage in my own home. This isn't your home, Robert said quietly, but his voice carried more menace than any shout. This is our house. And if you can't contribute to this family's success, then you don't belong here. I looked around the kitchen where I'd eaten breakfast every morning for the past 6 years since graduating high school. The same table where I used to do homework while my parents helped Dylan with his projects. The same refrigerator covered with Dylan's awards and achievements with nothing representing my accomplishments. Fine, I said. I'll pack my things. Good, Sarah said. And don't think you can come crawling back when you realize how hard the real world is. Family comes first in this house, and you just proved you're not really family. I turned toward the stairs, but Robert's voice stopped me. One more thing, Victor. You have until Sunday night to change your mind about the college money. $6,000, or you're banned from this house permanently. We've already told your Uncle James and Aunt Linda that you refuse to help with Dylan's education. They're very disappointed in you. My hands clenched into fists. Uncle James and Aunt Linda had always been kind to me, and now my parents were poisoning them against me with lies and half-truths. You told them I refused before even asking me. We knew what your answer would be, Sarah said. Selfish people are predictable. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind me, I could hear Dylan asking if they thought I would really leave, and Robert assuring him that I would come to my senses once I realized I had nowhere else to go. As I started pulling clothes from my dresser, I found myself thinking about the oil stain in our driveway. 2 years of my car sitting in the same spot, and now there was nothing left but a dark mark on the concrete. Physical evidence that something important had been there, something that mattered, before it was taken away. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the wastebasket next to my desk, I could see the corner of a crumpled piece of paper. I pulled it out and smoothed it flat, and my world shifted again. It was a receipt from Bill Watson, our neighbor. But the amount written in his careful handwriting wasn't $8,000. It was $12,000. They had lied about the sale price, pocketing $4,000 extra while telling me they only kept $2,000 for rent. They hadn't just stolen my car, they had stolen my car and then stolen the money from selling it, and then lied to my face about both crimes. I folded the receipt carefully and put it in my wallet. For For the first time since I had walked into that kitchen, I felt something other than pain and confusion. I felt angry. I waited until morning to confront them with the receipt. I had spent the entire night lying awake, staring at the ceiling and trying to process the depth of their betrayal. By dawn, I had moved past shock and landed squarely in the territory of cold, calculated fury. They were sitting at the breakfast table when I walked downstairs sharing coffee and discussing Dylan's course schedule, like they were planning a vacation instead of ruining their older son's life. Dylan was showing them pictures on his phone of the Riverside University campus, pointing out the Student Union building and the expensive dormitories he wanted to live in. "We need to talk," I said, placing the receipt on the table between my mother's coffee cup and my father's newspaper. Sarah glanced at the paper, and her face went pale. Robert's eyes narrowed as he read Bill Watson's handwriting, but he didn't look surprised. He looked caught. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "From my wastebasket, the one in my room that you thought I wouldn't check." I sat down across from them, keeping my voice level. $12,000, not $8,000. You stole an extra $4,000 from the sale of my car and lied to my face about it. Dylan looked confused, glancing between the receipt and our parents. "What's he talking about?" "Nothing," Sarah said quickly. "Victor is trying to cause drama because he doesn't want to help pay for your education." "No," I said firmly. "I'm talking about the fact that our parents are thieves. They sold my car for $12,000, told me it was $8,000, kept $4,000 for themselves, and are now demanding I give them $6,000 more." Robert stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward and hitting the wall. "You ungrateful piece of shit. How dare you call us thieves? What would you call people who steal someone's car, lie about the sale price, and demand money for something they never discussed with the victim?" Robert's hand moved faster than I expected. The slap across my face was hard enough to knock me sideways in my chair, and I tasted blood where my teeth cut the inside of my cheek. "Robert?" Sarah gasped, but she didn't sound horrified. She sounded worried about the neighbors hearing. "Don't you ever disrespect us in our own home," Robert said, standing over me while I held my cheek. "We raised you, we fed you, we put a roof over your head for 24 years. Everything you have, everything you are, you owe to us." Dylan was recording everything on his phone, grinning like this was the most entertaining thing he had seen all week. "This is going on my Instagram," he said. "My brother having a total meltdown because he doesn't want to help family." I looked at my little brother holding his phone up, like I was performing for his amusement, and something fundamental broke inside my chest. This wasn't a family disagreement. This was systematic abuse disguised as normal family dynamics, and I had been too close to it to see clearly. "You hit me," I said to Robert, "and I'll do it again if you keep running your mouth." Sarah nodded approvingly. "Maybe now you'll start showing some respect and gratitude." I stood up slowly, wiping blood from the corner of my mouth with the back of my hand. The three of them watched me expectantly, waiting for me to apologize, or break down, or beg for forgiveness. Instead, I picked up the receipt and put it back in my wallet. "I need to think about this," I said calmly. "Think fast," Robert said. "You have until Sunday night to produce $6,000 or you're out permanently, and we're not keeping this family business private anymore. Everyone is going to know what kind of son you really are." I nodded and walked back upstairs without another word. Behind me, I could hear Dylan laughing and asking if he could post the video online right away. Sarah was telling him to wait until after I left in case I tried to cause more trouble. Back in my room, I sat on my bed and pulled out my phone. My face was still burning from Robert's slap, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. For the first time, I was seeing my family's behavior for what it really was, and I was realizing that I had options they didn't know about. I called Tech Support Solutions and asked to speak with Janet Martinez, my supervisor. She had always been fair to me. and I trusted her more than I trusted anyone in my immediate family. "Victor, is everything okay? You left yesterday without finishing your shift." "I'm having some family issues," I said carefully. "I was wondering if there might be any extra shifts available this weekend, or if that senior technician position is still open." "Actually, yes to both. We just got approval to hire for the senior position, and it comes with a 20% salary increase. Are you interested?" 20% more money would change everything about my financial situation. "Very interested." "Great, can you come in Monday morning to discuss the details? And Victor, if you need someone to talk to about whatever's going on at home, my door is always open." After hanging up with Janet, I called my college friend Marcus Thompson in Portland. Marcus and I had stayed in touch since graduation, and he had been trying to convince me to visit his city for months. "Victor, man, I was just thinking about you. How's life in suburban hell?" "Complicated. Hey, remember how you said Portland is always hiring tech people?" "Constantly. Why, you finally ready to escape the family nest?" "Something like that." "Would it be crazy if I said I wanted to visit next week?" "Not crazy at all. I've got a couch you can crash on, and I know at least 3 companies that are desperate for someone with your skills." "What happened?" I gave Marcus a brief overview of the car situation, without going into the more painful details about the physical violence or the systematic financial abuse. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Dude," he said finally, "that's not normal family stuff. That's actually really messed up." "I'm starting to realize that." "Look, forget the visit. Just come. Pack your stuff and come to Portland. I'll help you find a job and an apartment. You deserve better than people who steal your car and then demand you pay them for the privilege." After talking to Marcus, I spent the rest of Saturday quietly organizing my belongings, while my family went about their weekend routines. Sarah went grocery shopping, complaining loudly about how expensive everything was and how much money they would save once I started contributing properly. Robert spent the afternoon in the garage working on projects and occasionally glancing up at my bedroom window like he was keeping track of my movements. Dylan brought friends over, and I could hear them in the backyard talking about college plans and spring break trips funded by their parents. Occasionally, one of them would ask about me, and Dylan would explain that his older brother was having trouble accepting adult responsibilities. While they were all distracted, I went through my desk and discovered something that made my blood run cold. Hidden behind old school papers, I found bank statements that weren't mine. Sarah had been opening mail addressed to me, including a tax refund check for $1,500 that I never received. But that wasn't the worst part. Mixed in with the bank statements were credit applications filled out in my name using my social security number and personal information. Some had been approved, some had been rejected. All of them were for accounts I had never requested and amounts I had never borrowed. My parents hadn't just stolen my car. They had been stealing my identity, applying for credit in my name, and destroying my financial future without my knowledge. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a digital record of their crimes. Then I put the papers back exactly where I found them and went downstairs to make myself a sandwich, acting like nothing had changed. At dinner that night, my family discussed Dylan's college plans with enthusiasm that felt forced and performative. Robert talked about the business connections Dylan would make at Riverside University. Sarah described the internship opportunities that would be available to him. Dylan basked in their attention while shooting occasional smug glances in my direction. "Victor's being awfully quiet," Sarah observed. "I hope you're using this time to think seriously about what's important in life." "I am," I said honestly. "I'm thinking about a lot of things." "Good," Robert said. "Family loyalty isn't something you can put a price on. $6,000 is a small investment in your brother's future. And our family's reputation," Sarah added. "People are watching to see what kind of man you really are." Dylan nodded sagely, like he was an expert on family dynamics, instead of a 17-year-old who had never worked a day in his life. "It's not really about the money. It's about proving you care about something other than yourself." I almost laughed. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. That night, I lay in bed listening to the sounds of my family settling in for sleep. Sarah and Robert talking quietly in their bedroom about vacation plans. Dylan on his phone with friends bragging about his college acceptance. Normal family sounds from a family that had been systematically robbing me for years. But I had one more discovery to make before I could finalize my plans. On Sunday morning, while everyone was at church, I had stopped going months earlier. Claiming work obligations, I decided to call Bill Watson directly. Bill answered on the second ring, sounding friendly and curious. "Victor, how are you doing, son?" "I'm okay, Mr. Watson. I was calling about my car." "Oh, that's right. I've been meaning to thank you properly. It's a great little Honda. Runs like a dream." "Thank you, sir. I was wondering if you don't mind me asking, what did you end up paying for it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Well, I paid your folks $14,000 for it. Market value, you know. I know they wanted to make sure you got a fair price since you're moving out and starting fresh. $14,000. Not $12,000. Not $8,000. $14,000, and I had seen exactly 0 cents of it. "That's great," I managed to say. "I'm glad it worked out for everyone." "Your parents are good people, Victor. They're proud of you for helping your brother with college. That's real family spirit." After hanging up with Bill Watson, I sat in our living room surrounded by family photos and memories, and I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. My parents hadn't just stolen my car. They had stolen $6,000 from the sale, used my identity for financial fraud, and convinced our neighbors that I was a willing participant in their schemes. But now I knew the truth, and I was going to make sure everyone else knew it too. Sunday dinner was always a family tradition in our house, but this week it felt more like a performance than a meal. Sarah had made pot roast with all the sides Dylan's favorite. Robert carved the meat while discussing Dylan's course registration timeline. Dylan showed us pictures of his future dorm room, already planning how to decorate it. I sat quietly through the first 15 minutes, letting them enjoy their fantasy of family harmony, while I gathered my courage for what had to happen next. "I talked to Bill Watson yesterday," I said during a pause in their conversation. Robert's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Sarah's hand tightened around her water glass. Dylan looked confused, glancing between us like he was watching a tennis match. "Oh," Sarah said carefully. "What did you talk about?" "My car. He told me he paid you $14,000 for it, not $8,000 like you claimed. Not even $12,000 like the receipt I found. $14,000. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert set down his fork and leaned back in his chair, studying my face, like he was trying to calculate how much damage control would be necessary. "You've been calling our neighbors behind our backs?" he asked quietly. "I've been trying to understand how my parents could steal $6,000 from me and then demand I pay them $6,000 more. Dylan's phone appeared in his hands like magic, already recording. "This is getting good," he muttered. "Put the phone down," Robert snapped, but Dylan just grinned and kept filming. "No way. This is hilarious. Victor, finally growing a backbone." I reached into my wallet and pulled out the photographs I had printed that morning. Bank statements with my name on them for accounts I never opened. Credit applications filled out in my handwriting but signed by someone else. Payment records for loans I never requested. "I also found these in your desk," I said, spreading the papers across the dinner table like evidence in a courtroom. Credit cards in my name, loans in my name, a tax refund check made out to me that you deposited in your account. Sarah's face went white. Robert's went red. Dylan stopped recording, suddenly realizing this wasn't entertainment anymore. "What the hell is this?" Dylan asked, picking up one of the credit card statements. "Identity theft," I said calmly. "Our parents have been using my personal information to apply for credit, destroying my credit score and putting me thousands of dollars in debt that I never knew existed." Robert exploded out of his chair, sending plates flying and gravy spilling across the tablecloth. How dare you go through our private papers? Private papers. These are accounts in my name. This is my financial information that you've been hiding from me. Sarah started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration and anger at being caught. Victor, you don't understand how hard things have been for us. The mortgage payments, Dylan's college expenses, your father's medical bills from last year. What medical bills? The emergency room visit when he hurt his back at work, she said, wiping her nose with her napkin. Insurance didn't cover everything. So you decided to steal my identity instead of talking to me about it. We weren't stealing, Robert said, his voice dangerously low. We were borrowing against your future. You live in our house, eat our food, use our electricity. This is how families work, Victor. Everyone contributes. By committing federal crimes, Dylan had gone very quiet, staring at the credit card statements with growing understanding. Mom, Dad, this is really illegal, isn't it? Shut up, Dylan, Sarah snapped. This is between us and your brother. No, I said firmly. This is between me and the police, and me and a lawyer, and me and the credit reporting agencies. This isn't family business anymore. This is criminal activity. Robert moved around the table faster than I expected, grabbing me by the front of my shirt and pulling me out of my chair. His face was inches from mine, and I could smell the beer he had been drinking with dinner. You call the police on your own family and you're dead to me forever. Do you understand me? Dead. Gone. We'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable. We'll say you made up stories about us to avoid paying your debts. Let go of me. No. You listen to me, you ungrateful little shit. We gave you life. We raised you when we could have given you up for adoption. We kept you fed and clothed and housed for 24 years. Everything we did for this family's survival. I looked into my father's eyes and saw something that terrified me more than his anger. I saw desperation. Desperate people did desperate things, and I was trapped in a house with 3 desperate people who had already proven they were willing to commit crimes to get what they wanted. You're hurting me, I said. Good. Maybe pain will help you remember where your loyalties should be. Sarah stood up and moved to Robert's side, not to stop him, but to support him. Victor, we can work this out as a family. But if you involve outsiders in our business, there's no coming back from that. Dylan was still staring at the papers, and when he looked up at me, his expression had changed completely. The smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Victor, he said quietly, if you call the police, what happens to my college? I don't know, Dylan. But the money for tuition? What money? I asked. The money they stole from selling my car. The money they borrowed illegally using my credit. There is no money, Dylan. There never was any money. They've been running a con game and we're all victims. That's when Sarah broke down completely. Not the calculated tears from earlier, but genuine sobbing that shook her whole body. We're going to lose the house, she said between gasps. We're 6 months behind on the mortgage. Robert's been out of work for 3 weeks, but we haven't told anyone. We thought if we could just get through Dylan's first semester, maybe Robert would find something, maybe we could catch up. Robert's grip on my shirt loosened as he stared at his wife. Sarah, shut up. No, I'm tired of pretending we're drowning Victor. We've been drowning for months. The car money was supposed to help us catch up on bills, and Dylan's tuition was supposed to come from the credit we took out in your name. You mean the credit you stole in my name? Yes, she screamed. Yes, we stole it. We stole your car, and we stole your credit, and we've been lying to everyone, including ourselves, about how bad things really are. Are you happy now? The kitchen fell silent except for Sarah's crying, and the sound of Dylan's phone hitting the table as his hands started shaking. Robert released me and sank back into his chair like all the fight had gone out of him. How much do you owe? I asked quietly. $57,000, Robert said without looking up. Credit cards, medical bills, missed mortgage payments, and penalties. Dylan made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. $57,000. How am I supposed to go to college if we're $57,000 in debt? You're not, I said gently. At least not to Riverside University. But I already told everyone I was going there. I already picked out my dorm room. I already registered for classes. Then you'll have to untell them. Dylan looked at our parents like he was seeing them for the first time. You knew we couldn't afford it. You knew when you told me to apply, when you helped me pick courses, when you let me tell all my friends. You knew we didn't have the money. Sarah nodded miserably. We thought we could make it work. By stealing from Victor. By borrowing from Victor, Robert corrected weakly. Without his permission, Dylan said. Using his identity, ruining his credit. He looked at me with something that might have been respect. That's theft, Dad. That's identity theft and fraud. And Victor could send you both to prison if he wanted to. The weight of Dylan's words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. For the first time in my life, my little brother was seeing our parents clearly, and he didn't like what he saw. So what happens now? Sarah asked. I looked around the table at my family. My parents who had raised me and also systematically robbed me. My brother who had spent years treating me like a loser, but was now facing the collapse of his own dreams. The people who were supposed to love and protect me, who had instead made me into their victim. Now I call the police, I said. Robert lunged across the table, knocking over glasses and sending food flying. No, you can't destroy your own family. But I was already backing toward the kitchen door. You destroyed this family when you decided to commit crimes instead of asking for help. Victor, please, Sarah begged. Think about Dylan. Think about what this will do to his future. I paused at the doorway and looked back at my little brother. He was 17 years old, and his entire world had just collapsed around him. But he wasn't begging me to stay quiet. He wasn't threatening me or trying to guilt me into protecting his college plans. I'm sorry, Dylan, I said. You deserve better parents than this. Yeah, he said quietly. We all do. And with that, I walked out of the kitchen, up the stairs, and into my room to pack the rest of my belongings and start making phone calls that would change everything. I closed my bedroom door and sat on my bed listening to the chaos erupting downstairs. Robert was shouting about family loyalty and legal consequences. Sarah was crying and asking how they were going to explain everything to the relatives. Dylan was demanding to know why they hadn't told him the truth about their financial situation months ago. But instead of falling apart like they probably expected, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I opened my laptop and began executing the plan I had been developing all weekend. First, I logged into my bank account and initiated a transfer of my savings to a new account I had opened online with a different bank. $3,400 every penny I had managed to save while living under my parents' roof and supporting their household expenses. Next, I called the fraud department of all 3 major credit bureaus and reported the unauthorized accounts that had been opened in my name. The representative at Experian was particularly helpful, walking me through the process of filing identity theft reports and explaining how to dispute fraudulent debts. This is unfortunately more common than you might think, she said. Family members often have access to personal information that makes identity theft easier. The good news is that you're not responsible for debts you didn't authorize, but the process of clearing your credit can take several months. While I was on hold with TransUnion, I received a text message from Marcus in Portland. Checked with my boss. They want to interview you by video call tomorrow if you're interested. Position starts at $65,000 plus benefits. When can you get here? $65,000 was nearly double what I was making at Tech Support Solutions. In Portland, I could afford my own apartment, my own car, my own life. I could start over completely away from people who saw me as a financial resource instead of a son and brother. I texted back, can be there by Wednesday. Still want a roommate? Always. Spare bedroom is yours as long as you need it. The sounds from downstairs were getting louder. Dylan's voice had joined the argument, and he sounded angrier than I had ever heard him. Through my bedroom floor, I could hear him shouting something about lies and broken promises and ruined plans. I pulled out the voice recorder app I had secretly downloaded on my phone 3 days earlier. After the first conversation about the car sale had made me suspicious about my family's honesty. For the past 72 hours, I had been recording every interaction with my parents, gathering evidence of their threats, their admissions of theft, and their plans to manipulate me further. The recordings were clear and damning. Robert admitting they had kept extra money from the car sale, Sarah confessing to opening credit accounts in my name. Both of them threatening me with eviction and public humiliation if I didn't comply with their demands. Dylan mocking me and encouraging the abuse while recording it for his own entertainment. But I had also recorded their admissions of desperation, Sarah crying about the mortgage payments, Robert revealing the full scope of their debt, both of them acknowledging that their financial crimes were motivated by panic rather than malice. I copied the recordings to a secure cloud storage account and then sent them to myself via email, creating multiple backup copies. Then I drafted a detailed letter explaining everything that had happened, including dates, amounts, and specific threats that had been made. The letter wasn't for my parents, it was for Bill Watson, our neighbor, who had bought my car. I printed the letter along with copies of the fraudulent credit applications and bank statements I had photographed. Then I sealed everything in an envelope addressed to Bill along with a note explaining that the car sale had been conducted without my knowledge or consent and that my parents had lied to him about my involvement in the transaction. By the time I finished preparing my evidence package, the house had gone quiet. I could hear my family moving around in the kitchen, probably cleaning up the mess from dinner, and trying to figure out what to do next. I packed my essential belongings into 2 large duffel bags focusing on clothes, personal documents, and electronics I would need for job interviews. Everything else could be replaced or retrieved later if necessary. As I zipped up the second bag, my phone rang. Janet Martinez from Tech Support Solutions. Victor, I hope you don't mind me calling on a Sunday. I wanted to follow up on our conversation about the senior technician position. Not at all. I appreciate you thinking of me. I've been talking with our management team and we're prepared to offer you the position immediately along with a substantial signing bonus. We've been impressed with your work ethic and technical skills. That's incredible news. Can I ask what prompted the urgency? Janet paused for a moment. Honestly, we received some concerning information about your home situation. Nothing specific, but enough to make us want to make sure you know you have options and support. I wondered who might have reached out to my employer, then realized it didn't matter. What mattered was that people were starting to pay attention to my situation and help was becoming available. I'm very interested in the position, I said, but I should mention that I'm considering relocating to Portland for family reasons. Portland has a great tech scene. If you decide to move, I'd be happy to provide references and recommendations. You're a valued employee, Victor, regardless of where you end up working. After hanging up with Janet, I sat in my childhood bedroom and looked around at the familiar walls covered with posters and awards from high school. This had been my safe space for years, the one place in the house where I could be myself without judgment or manipulation. But it had never really been safe, had it? My parents had been monitoring my mail, accessing my financial accounts, and making decisions about my future without my input. Even this room had been under surveillance, my privacy violated in ways I was only beginning to understand. I walked over to Bill Watson's house and slipped my letter under his front door along with a note asking him to read it carefully and contact me if he had questions. Then I returned home and loaded my bags into the rideshare vehicle I had called. My family was still in the kitchen, but they had gone quiet again. Through the window, I could see them sitting around the table looking defeated and lost. Dylan was slumped in his chair, staring at his phone. Robert was holding his head in his hands. Sarah was methodically cleaning up the dinner dishes like normal domestic routines could somehow restore order to their collapsing world. I thought about going back inside to say goodbye, but I realized there was nothing left to say. They had made their choices, and now I was making mine. The rideshare driver helped me load my bags and asked if I was moving somewhere exciting. I told him I was starting a new job in Portland, and he congratulated me on the opportunity. As we pulled away from Maple Street, I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. The house looked smaller than I remembered, more ordinary. Just another suburban home with ordinary problems and ordinary people making extraordinary mistakes. But I had left something behind that would change everything. By tomorrow morning, my carefully planned surprise would begin unfolding, and my family would discover that their youngest victim had grown up enough to fight back. I settled into the passenger seat and opened my laptop to respond to emails from potential employers in Portland. For the first time in years, my future felt like it belonged to me. I spent Sunday night in a hotel near the airport preparing for my flight to Portland and monitoring my phone for the fallout I knew was coming. Marcus had texted me the address of his apartment and promised to pick me up when I landed. The job interview was scheduled for Tuesday morning via video call from Marcus's living room. At 6:30 Monday morning, my phone started buzzing with calls from my family. First Sarah, then Robert, then Dylan. I let them all go to voicemail, but I listened to the messages to gauge how my plan was unfolding. Sarah's message was frantic. "Victor, you need to call me immediately. Bill Watson is here demanding his money back, and he's threatening to call the police. Please come home so we can work this out as a family." Robert's message was angry. "If you think you can destroy your own family to get revenge, you're making a huge mistake. Call me back right now, or there will be consequences you can't imagine." Dylan's message surprised me. "Victor, I read your letter. I had no idea how bad this really was. Can we talk?" By 7 a.m., Bill Watson had called me directly. He sounded confused and concerned rather than angry. "Victor, I got your letter, and I have to say I'm pretty shocked by what you've told me. I had no idea your parents sold your car without your permission. Thank you for reading it, Mr. Watson. I know it's a lot to take in." "It certainly is. I've been talking with my wife about this, and we think you should know that your parents told us you were moving out voluntarily to start fresh somewhere new. They said you wanted to sell the car quickly to help with your brother's college expenses." "None of that was true, sir." "So I'm beginning to understand? The thing is, Victor, I paid your folks $14,000 for that car in good faith. If the sale was fraudulent, then I'm out my money, and you're out your car, and your parents have profited from deceiving both of us." "Yes, sir, that's exactly what happened." Bill sighed heavily. "Well, I've already called my lawyer, and he says I have grounds for both criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. I don't like being lied to, and I especially don't like being made an accessory to theft." "I understand completely. What I don't understand is how parents could do this to their own son. It's just not right." After hanging up with Bill, I checked my social media accounts and found that Dylan had indeed posted the videos of our family confrontations, but the response was nothing like what he had expected. Instead of people mocking me for standing up to my parents, the comments were overwhelmingly supportive of my position. "Dude, your parents literally stole your car and your identity. You should call the police. This is financial abuse. I hope you get out of that house safely. Your brother is a hero for standing up to this treatment. Parents like this are toxic. Is there a GoFundMe for this guy? I want to help him get back on his feet." The videos had been shared hundreds of times, and more comments were appearing every few minutes. People were sharing their own stories of family financial abuse, offering advice and support, and expressing outrage at my parents' behavior. Dylan called again while I was reading the comments. "Victor, I messed up. I thought people would think you were being dramatic, but everyone is saying Mom and Dad are criminals." "Because they are criminals, Dylan." "I know that now. I took the videos down, but people already shared them everywhere. I'm getting messages from news reporters wanting to interview me." "News reporters?" "Yeah, apparently family financial abuse is a bigger story than I realized. Some woman from Channel 7 wants to talk to me about our situation. I wasn't sure how I felt about media attention, but I realized it might actually help my case." public scrutiny would make it harder for my parents to manipulate the narrative or intimidate me into dropping charges. Dylan, you should know that I've already filed fraud reports with the credit agencies and I'm planning to press criminal charges against Mom and Dad. There was a long pause. Yeah, I figured. I would too if I were you. What about your college plans? Riverside is out, obviously. I called them this morning and withdrew my enrollment. I'm going to apply to the community college and see if I can get financial aid. That's probably smart. Victor. I'm really sorry for how I treated you. I thought you were just being selfish, but I didn't understand how much they were stealing from you. I feel like an idiot. It was the first genuine apology I had ever received from my little brother, and it meant more to me than I expected. Thank you for saying that. Are you really moving to Portland? Yeah, I have a job interview tomorrow and a friend who's letting me stay with him until I find my own place. Good. You deserve better than this family. After talking with Dylan, I spent the rest of the morning on the phone with various authorities. The police fraud department took my report and assigned a detective to investigate the identity theft charges. The FBI became involved when I explained that my parents had been applying for credit across state lines using my information. But the most satisfying call was from my bank, informing me that they had successfully disputed several fraudulent charges and were crediting my account for overdraft fees that had resulted from my parents' unauthorized transactions. Mr. Rodriguez, the representative, said, "I want you to know that identity theft by family members is taken very seriously by financial institutions. We see this more often than we'd like, and we have specific protocols for helping victims recover from this type of abuse. I appreciate that more than you know. We're also flagging your account with special security measures to prevent future unauthorized access. No one will be able to make changes or access your information without speaking directly to you and verifying multiple pieces of identification." By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly with updates. Bill Watson had filed charges against my parents for fraud and theft. The mortgage company had accelerated their foreclosure proceedings after learning about the family's legal troubles. Dylan's friends were asking questions about the viral videos that had exposed our family's dysfunction. But the most unexpected call came from Tech Support Solutions. Janet Martinez sounded excited when I answered. "Victor, I have some incredible news. Our CEO saw the videos of your family situation, and he wants the company to take a public stand supporting you." I'm sorry, what? He's a big advocate for young people escaping toxic family situations. The company is prepared to offer you a promotion to executive training program, cover your legal fees related to the identity theft charges, and provide a relocation bonus if you decide to move. I was speechless. My family's betrayal had inadvertently connected me with people who wanted to help rather than exploit me. Janet, that's incredibly generous. But I should tell you, I'm seriously considering the Portland opportunity. We understand. Whatever you decide, we want you to know that you have our full support. Sometimes the best way to heal from family trauma is to build a new life somewhere fresh. As my plane prepared for takeoff that evening, I looked out the window at the city where I had spent my entire life. Somewhere down there, my parents were dealing with the consequences of their choices. Bill Watson was demanding his money back. Lawyers were preparing legal documents. Dylan was facing the reality that his privileged future had been built on stolen foundations. But I felt surprisingly peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, I was traveling towards something I wanted, rather than running away from something that hurt me. I had evidence allies and options. Most importantly, I had finally learned the difference between family loyalty and enabling criminal behavior. The plane lifted off, carrying me toward a new life where people would value my contributions rather than exploit my good nature. Behind me, the wheels of justice were beginning to turn, and my family was about to discover what happened when their favorite victim finally fought back. Portland welcomed me with gray skies and the kind of drizzle that made everything look fresh and full of possibility. Marcus met me at the airport with a huge grin and a sign that said Future Tech Executive, which made me laugh for the first time in weeks. "How does it feel to be a free man?" he asked as we loaded my bags into his car. "Terrifying and amazing at the same time." "That sounds about right. Come on, let's get you settled so you can prepare for your interview tomorrow." Marcus lived in a converted warehouse in the Pearl District, with exposed brick walls and enormous windows that looked out over the city. The spare bedroom was larger than my entire childhood bedroom, and it came furnished with everything I needed to start over. While I was unpacking my belongings, my phone started ringing with updates from home. Detective Amanda Rodriguez from the fraud unit had been assigned to my case, and she had spent Tuesday morning interviewing my family. "Mr. Johnson, I want you to know that we've confirmed multiple instances of identity theft and fraud," she said. "Your parents have been very cooperative, but they're facing serious criminal charges." "How serious?" "Federal identity theft charges carry potential prison sentences of up to 15 years. The amount of money involved and the systematic nature of the fraud make this a felony case. I had expected consequences, but 15 years in prison seemed overwhelming, even for what my parents had done. Detective, I want them to face consequences for their actions, but I don't necessarily want to destroy their lives completely." "I understand, and that's something you can discuss with the prosecutor when the time comes. But right now we're focused on documenting the scope of their criminal activity." After hanging up with Detective Rodriguez, I checked my social media accounts and discovered that Dylan's videos had been picked up by several news outlets. Local television stations were running stories about family financial abuse, using our situation as an example of how toxic family dynamics could escalate into criminal behavior. The coverage was surprisingly sympathetic to my position. Financial experts were interviewed about the growing problem of family members stealing identities and exploiting young adults who still lived at home. Legal analysts discussed the challenges of prosecuting relatives for fraud and theft. But the most shocking development came when I received a call from my Uncle James. "Victor, I owe you a huge apology," he said without any preamble. "Your mother called us last month claiming you had refused to help with Dylan's college expenses, but now I've seen the news coverage and I understand what really happened." "Uncle James, you don't need to apologize. Mom and Dad lied to you." "They did more than lie to us, son. They stole from us too." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" 3 years ago, your father asked to borrow $15,000 for what he called emergency medical expenses. He provided documentation that looked legitimate, including hospital bills and insurance forms. We gave him the money because family helps family. "And he never paid you back?" "He made a few small payments, but then he stopped returning our calls. When we pressed him about it, he got angry and said we were being unreasonable about repayment terms we had never discussed." "Uncle James, I'm so sorry." "It gets worse, Victor. After seeing your story on the news, I started going through our old paperwork. Some of those hospital bills were dated after the services were supposedly provided. Some of the insurance forms had information that doesn't match our family's actual coverage." I closed my eyes, realizing that my parents' criminal behavior extended far beyond what they had done to me. "We think your parents have been running a systematic fraud scheme for years," Uncle James continued. "We're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow to explore our legal options. More victims, more crimes, more evidence that my parents had been living a double life built on lies and theft." The job interview Tuesday morning went better than I could have hoped. The company was an innovative software development firm that created applications for small businesses. The interview panel was impressed with my technical skills and my ability to troubleshoot complex problems under pressure. "Victor, we've obviously seen the news coverage about your family situation," the hiring manager said. "I hope you know that takes courage to stand up for yourself like you did." "Thank you. It wasn't easy." "We believe in supporting people who have strong ethical principles, even when those principles create personal costs. The position is yours if you want it, with a starting salary of $70,000 and full benefits." $70,000 was more money than I had ever imagined making. Combined with Portland's lower cost of living compared to my hometown, it would allow me to live comfortably while rebuilding my credit and my life. I accept, I said immediately. Excellent. We'd like you to start Monday if possible. After the interview, Marcus took me apartment hunting. We found a one-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood with bike access to my new office and enough space for me to create a real home for the first time in my adult life. That afternoon, my phone rang with the call I had been expecting. My mother crying hysterically. "Victor, please come home. We need to talk about this situation before it goes any further." "There's nothing to discuss, Mom. You committed crimes and now you're facing the consequences. We're going to lose everything. The house, our savings, our reputation. Dylan can't go to college because of the legal fees. Your father might go to prison. You should have thought about those consequences before you stole my car and my identity. We were desperate. We thought we could pay everything back before you found out. With what money, you're $57,000 in debt, and now you owe Bill Watson $14,000 more. You never had a plan to pay me back." Sarah's crying intensified. "Please, Victor, we're your family. Family forgives family. Family doesn't steal from family in the first place." I hung up on her feeling sad, but not guilty. They had made their choices, and they had never considered how those choices would affect me until the consequences became unavoidable. Wednesday evening brought the most satisfying call of all. Bill Watson had been busy. "Victor, I thought you should know that your parents signed a confession and agreed to repay the full $14,000 they owe me." "How are they planning to do that?" "They're selling the house. Apparently, they're behind on mortgage payments anyway. And between the legal fees and the restitution they owe, they don't have much choice." My parents were losing their home. The house where I'd grown up, where Dylan had expected to live until college, where 3 generations of family memories had been created. It was a heavy consequence, but it was also a direct result of their own actions. "Bill, can I ask you something? Are you planning to press criminal charges, or are you satisfied with the financial restitution?" "Well, that's an interesting question. My lawyer says I have a strong case for criminal prosecution, but he also says that might not get me my money back any faster." "All whack. What would it take for you to consider dropping the criminal charges?" "Full restitution plus damages for my time and legal fees. Maybe $20,000 total, and a public apology acknowledging what they did." I thought about that number. $20,000 was manageable if my parents sold their house, but it would force them to start over completely. "Would you be willing to consider a payment plan if they can't come up with the full amount immediately?" "Why are you trying to help them, Victor, after what they did to you?" "Because they're still my family, even if they're criminals. And because I want this to end with everyone learning something instead of everyone being destroyed." Thursday brought news that my story had reached national media outlets. A financial advice columnist had written about family identity theft using my situation as a case study. A victims' rights organization had reached out to offer support and resources. Most surprisingly, a television producer wanted to interview me for a documentary about family financial abuse. But the most important call came Friday morning from Detective Rodriguez. "Victor, I wanted to update you on the investigation. We've identified at least 6 different instances of identity theft and fraud involving your family, totaling approximately $35,000 in illegally obtained credit." $35,000. Your parents were busy, but here's the thing. They're cooperating fully with our investigation, and they've agreed to plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for making full restitution to all victims. "What kind of reduced charges?" "Misdemeanor fraud instead of felony identity theft. Probation instead of prison time as long as they complete restitution and attend financial counseling." "That seems fair." "There's one more thing, Victor. Your brother Dylan has been cleared of any wrongdoing. We determined that he was unaware of his parents' criminal activity and was essentially another victim of their manipulation." I felt relief knowing that Dylan wouldn't face legal consequences for our parents' choices. He was still just a teenager, and he had already lost his college plans and his family home. He didn't deserve to lose his future, too. That weekend, I signed the lease on my Portland apartment and bought furniture for my new home. Marcus helped me set up my bedroom and office space, and we celebrated my successful escape from family toxicity with takeout food and local beer. "You know what I'm most proud of," Marcus said as we sat on my new couch looking out at the city lights. "What's that?" "You didn't let their dysfunction turn you into a bitter person. You fought back when you needed to, but you're not trying to destroy them completely. That takes real strength." I thought about that observation as I prepared for my first day at my new job. My parents had taught me what not to do, and their betrayal had forced me to develop independence I might never have gained otherwise. In a strange way, their criminal behavior had been the catalyst that pushed me toward a better life. But the real test would come Monday morning when Detective Rodriguez called with news about my family's final legal resolution. 6 months later, I was sitting in my Portland apartment on a Saturday morning drinking coffee and reading the news on my tablet when my phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. "Victor, I know you probably don't want to hear from us, but I wanted you to know that I graduated from high school yesterday. I'm starting at Portland Community College in the fall, and I have a part-time job at a bookstore to help pay for it. I think you'd be proud of how much I've learned about taking care of myself." I smiled as I read his message. Over the past few months, Dylan and I had slowly rebuilt our relationship through occasional texts and phone calls. He had grown up quickly after our family's financial crimes were exposed, and he was working hard to create an honest future for himself. My new life in Portland had exceeded every expectation I had dared to have. The job at Cascade Software Solutions had led to a promotion to senior systems analyst within 4 months, along with a salary increase that allowed me to save money for the first time in my adult life. My coworkers had become genuine friends, and my boss had become a mentor who encouraged my professional development. I had also bought a car. Not another Honda Civic, but a reliable Toyota Camry that I purchased with money I had earned through my own hard work. Every time I drove it, I remembered the feeling of having my transportation stolen and the helplessness that came with being dependent on people who didn't respect my autonomy. But the most important change was in how I understood family relationships. My new friends in Portland had taught me that healthy relationships were built on mutual respect and support, not obligation and manipulation. I had started dating Jessica, a teacher who worked at a local elementary school, and she had shown me what it felt like to be with someone who valued my opinions and encouraged my independence. The legal resolution with my parents had taken 3 months to finalize. They had pled guilty to misdemeanor fraud charges and were sentenced to 2 years of probation community service and mandatory financial counseling. They were required to pay full restitution to all their victims, including $14,000 to Bill Watson, $15,000 to Uncle James, and $6,500 to me for the car sale and identity theft damages. To meet these obligations, they had sold their house and most of their possessions, using the proceeds to pay their debts and legal fees. They were currently renting a small apartment across town and working multiple jobs to rebuild their lives honestly. Robert had found work as a maintenance supervisor at a local warehouse. Sarah was working as a cashier at a grocery store and attending night classes to become a bookkeeper. Both of them had written me letters apologizing for their behavior and acknowledging the damage they had caused to our family relationships. Robert's letter had been particularly difficult to read. "Victor, I know that sorry doesn't fix what I did to you, but I need you to understand that I was drowning, and I made terrible choices because I was too proud to ask for help. You were the strongest person in our family, and instead of learning from your example, I took advantage of your good nature. I'm in counseling now, learning how to be a better man and a better father. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm proud of the man you've become, despite my failures." Sarah's letter had focused on her regret about the emotional abuse. "I convinced myself that being harsh with you was preparing you for the real world. But the truth is that I was taking out my own frustrations and fears on the safest target. You deserved a mother who supported your dreams instead of stealing from them. I'm working on becoming the person I should have been all along. I had responded to both letters with forgiveness, but also with clear boundaries about future contact. I wasn't ready for regular family relationships, but I was willing to consider rebuilding trust slowly over time. The most healing part of my recovery had been connecting with other survivors of family financial abuse. The documentary about my story had aired on a major television network, and the response had been overwhelming. Hundreds of people had reached out to share similar experiences and to thank me for speaking publicly about family dynamics that were usually kept secret. I'd started volunteering with a local organization that helped young adults escape toxic family situations, offering practical advice about financial independence and emotional recovery. Helping others navigate similar challenges had given me purpose and perspective about my own healing journey. My relationship with Dylan had become the unexpected bright spot in my family recovery. After losing his college dreams and watching his parents face criminal charges, he had undergone a complete transformation in his understanding of personal responsibility and honest relationships. He had enrolled in community college and was studying business administration while working 20 hours a week at Powell's Books Portland's famous independent bookstore. He lived in a shared apartment with 3 roommates and paid all his own expenses without asking our parents for support. I used to think success meant having everything handed to you, he had told me during one of our phone conversations. But watching you build a new life from nothing has taught me that real success means earning things through your own efforts. Dylan had also become an advocate for other young people dealing with family financial abuse. He had spoken at several high school assemblies about the warning signs of family dysfunction and the importance of establishing financial independence early in adulthood. Our parents had been invited to one of his presentations, and they had sat in the back of the auditorium while Dylan described how their criminal behavior had affected both of us. Sarah had cried through most of his speech, but Robert had listened carefully and approached Dylan afterward to say he was proud of his son's courage in speaking truthfully about difficult topics. The national media attention had also led to positive changes beyond my personal situation. Several states had strengthened their laws against family identity theft, making it easier for victims to report crimes committed by relatives and recover from financial damage. A federal task force had been created to study family financial abuse and develop better resources for survivors. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome had been watching my former employer, Tech Support Solutions, implement new policies to support employees facing family crises. Janet Martinez had been promoted to Director of Human Resources, and she had created a program that provided emergency loans, legal assistance, and counseling for workers dealing with domestic financial abuse. Your situation opened our eyes to how common these problems really are, Janet had told me during one of our periodic check-in calls. We've helped 6 other employees escape similar situations in the past 4 months. This morning, as I prepared for a bike ride through Portland's beautiful spring weather, I reflected on how much my life had changed since that terrible birthday when I discovered my car had been stolen. The pain of family betrayal had been real and lasting, but it had also been the catalyst for personal growth I never could have achieved while living under my parents' manipulation. I had learned to trust my own judgment about relationships and boundaries. I had discovered that independence was worth fighting for even when it meant losing the illusion of family security. Most importantly, I had realized that forgiveness didn't require accepting ongoing abuse, and that healing didn't require maintaining toxic relationships. My phone rang as I was putting on my bike helmet. Jessica calling to confirm our dinner plans for that evening. "Hey, handsome, are you ready for our adventure today?" "Always ready for adventures with you." "Good, because I have a surprise for you tonight, something that celebrates how far you've come." "Any hints?" "Nope, but I think you're going to love it." As I locked my apartment and headed toward the bike path that would take me through the city I now called home, I thought about the letter I had received from my father that morning. He was scheduled to complete his probation in 6 more months, and he had asked if I might be willing to meet for coffee to discuss the possibility of rebuilding our relationship. I hadn't decided yet whether I was ready for that conversation, but I was grateful to have the choice. For the first time in my adult life, my family relationships would be based on my own decisions, rather than their demands or manipulations. The bike path wound along the Willamette River, offering stunning views of Mount Hood in the distance. Other cyclists and joggers shared the trail, and everyone exchanged friendly greetings as we passed each other. This was the kind of community I had always wanted to be part of. People who chose to treat each other with respect and kindness. As I rode through downtown Portland, I passed the building where I worked the coffee shop, where Jessica and I had our first date, the bookstore, where Dylan was building his new life, one honest paycheck at a time. Each location represented a choice I had made to prioritize my own well-being and growth over the comfort of familiar dysfunction. That evening, Jessica's surprise turned out to be a celebration dinner with Marcus and several other friends who had supported me through the most difficult period of my life. They had organized a small party to commemorate the 6-month anniversary of my move to Portland and my successful transition to independence. "We wanted to celebrate your courage," Jessica said, as she raised her glass in a toast. "You showed all of us what it looks like to choose truth over comfort, even when the truth is painful." Marcus nodded in agreement. "And you proved that family isn't just about blood relationships. It's about people who choose to love and support each other honestly." As I looked around the table at the people who had become my chosen family, I realized that my parents' betrayal had ultimately led me to discover what healthy relationships actually looked like. Their criminal behavior had forced me to develop the strength and independence necessary to build a life based on my own values, rather than their expectations. Later that night, as Jessica and I walked through our neighborhood, she asked me about my plans for the future. "I'm thinking about going back to school," I said. "Maybe getting an MBA so I can eventually start my own consulting firm helping small businesses with their technology needs." "That sounds perfect for you. You have such a gift for explaining complex technical concepts in ways that non-technical people can understand." It would also mean I could potentially hire Dylan as an intern when he finishes his business degree, help him get started in an honest career. "You really think he's changed that much?" "Yeah, I do. Watching our parents face criminal charges was a wake-up call for him. He's learned the difference between earning respect and demanding it." When I got home that night, I found an email from Detective Rodriguez with the final update on my family's case. My parents had completed their first year of probation, successfully making all required restitution payments and attending their mandatory counseling sessions. Their therapist had reported significant progress in helping them understand the impact of their behavior and develop healthier coping strategies for financial stress. The detective's email also included a message from the prosecutor who had handled the case. "Victor, I wanted you to know that your willingness to seek justice while also showing compassion for your family made this case a model for how family financial abuse should be addressed. Your parents received consequences that held them accountable while still giving them the opportunity to make things right. That balance is difficult to achieve, and it required maturity and wisdom from the victim that we don't often see." I closed my laptop and sat on my couch, looking out at the Portland skyline and thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The scared, confused young man who had worked a double shift on his birthday while his family stole his car felt like a different person from who I was today. That person had been dependent on others for validation and security. This person understood that real security came from developing the skills and relationships necessary to take care of myself. That person had confused family loyalty with accepting abuse. This person knew that true loyalty meant holding the people you love accountable for their actions. Most importantly, that person had been afraid to trust his own judgment about what was right and wrong. This person had learned that moral courage sometimes required standing alone against people who claim to love you. My phone buzzed with one final message of the day, this one from Dylan Victor. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but you're my hero. Not because you escaped our family's dysfunction, but because you did it without losing your compassion for the people who hurt you. I hope someday I can be half as strong and wise as you are. I smiled as I read his words, remembering the smirking 17-year-old who used to record our family arguments for his entertainment. The crisis that had torn our family apart had also given us the opportunity to discover who we really were when we weren't playing the roles our parents had assigned to us. As I prepared for bed in my own apartment bought with money I had earned honestly, I reflected on the life lesson that had emerged from the pain of family betrayal. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when that refusal causes short-term pain for everyone involved. True family relationships are built on mutual respect and honesty, not obligation and manipulation. And sometimes you have to lose the family you were born into in order to find the family you choose to build. The scared young man who had been working on his birthday 6 months ago never could have imagined that his family's betrayal would ultimately lead to this kind of peace and purpose. But life had a way of turning even the worst experiences into opportunities for growth, as long as you had the courage to choose healing over revenge and independence over security. I turned off the lights in my apartment and settled into my own bed, in my own home, surrounded by the life I had built through my own choices and efforts. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to grow, to help others, and to continue building the future I wanted instead of the future others expected from me. And for the first time in my adult life, that future felt entirely my own. Before I share my closing thoughts, I want to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where people who claim to love you were actually taking advantage of your good nature? How did you find the courage to set boundaries and protect yourself, even when it meant disappointing the people closest to you? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's struggling with similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others find it. And if you want to hear more stories about people who found the strength to overcome family dysfunction and build better lives, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Most importantly, please share this story with anyone who might be dealing with family financial abuse or manipulation. Sometimes people need to hear that they're not alone, and that it's possible to choose independence over dysfunction even when that choice feels impossible. Thank you for taking this journey with me. And remember, you deserve relationships that build you up instead of tearing you down. You deserve to be treated with respect by the people who claim to love you. And you deserve to have your own dreams and goals supported, not stolen to fund someone else's vision of success. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.